Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about SQL Server Locks MX. Now, there's a couple of scenarios whereby you would encounter SQL Server locks. Most of them are going to be with updates, inserts, deletes. There are the odd occasions when you're going to encounter other types of locks as well, in terms of memory locks or shared locks where you've got a lot of queries that are competing. But today we're going to mostly look at what happens with competing locks, or how to avoid competing locks. Now what I've done here is I've set up a little test between my VMs whereby I'm monitoring on one and I'm running the multiple queries on the other. Now this is a massive succession of updates. Now under normal circumstances in a production environment you might see a lot more than this, but I had to try and find a way to duplicate this on a much smaller scale, so bear with me. What we've got is multiple jobs running, in this case around 20 jobs, and those 20 jobs are simulating our user workload. Now in reality you normally wouldn't have this kind of thing unless you had probably a lot more than 20 users, so simulating this using those 20 users is kind of an unusual scenario, but I wanted to push the point here of hammering home. Now our job is finished and I'm going to disable the trace flag. Now what I probably forgot to mention at the beginning of this is I'm using a trace flag called 1224. Now 1224 disables the locking mechanism at an instance level. Now you don't usually want to do this, and under normal circumstances I don't recommend doing it unless you've got a very high transactional database that's going to use more locks than you want to get out of it. So the regular rule would still apply of trying to tune your database rather than switch on this trace flag. The other option is to alter the table to disable table locking. Also, I wouldn't usually recommend that, but on some cases disabling the table locking is the better approach, and certainly if you've only got one table that gets predominantly locked, altering the table locking is far better than switching on an instance level switch like the trace flag 1224. But I'm going to be particularly lazy in this video, so I switched on 1224. And the reason I did that is because as we've been sitting here watching and going through this video, what we've been looking for is the locking mechanism to show up. And on the left hand side of the screen it hasn't shown up, but the second run, which we've had just now, you can see we have that locking mechanism. And the reason is because I've turned that trace flag off. Now locks like this are not uncommon and they're perfectly normal behavior. Locks are abnormal SQL behavior, but they should never create a blocking mechanism whereby they lock against one another, and that's what we can do to avoid this. Keep in mind that this is simply treating the symptom, not the cause, and I highly recommend that you go in and find out the cause and adjust the programs or programmatical method that creates all these locks that potentially end up blocking one another, if that is your problem. On the other hand, if you don't have the access to do that, aka it's a third-party vended piece of software, or you just don't have the support or a massive amount of transactions, and that is the nature of your database, by all means use the trace flag or alter the table. Well, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you found it enjoyable or at least useful. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and hit that subscribe button. Thank you.